It is 5 to 8. Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you.
Morning. Hi, Adrian. How are you?
How are you keeping?
Good. Very good. Yourselves?
Good, very good. We were talking to you last week about Ross Byrne. Cullen was asking you whether he should go out and try and shoot the lights out, and I'm paraphrasing, but you had said no, he shouldn't try and force it, be solid, play his own thing. How was he?
Yeah, he was good, I think. It was, I think in terms of selection, he was playing for me with 2 12s. Bundyaki and McCluskey are very much for me in the mold of number 12s. One is excellent, and McCluskey is trying to get to that level for me. In terms of someone at 13 who can get the ball to the far 5-metre channel, you were minus that in your team, which is a big negative. I think it was exactly the case with Jonathan Danty when he wasn't playing for France, and sometimes the case when your value goes up when you don't play, and we have seen that in this Six Nations when Gary Ringrose doesn't play. You see the value to the team, what he brings. So from Ross Byrne's point of view, playing with McCluskey, playing with Bundyaki, it's a direct route. But when you're trying to manipulate defences and you don't have an outside break and at test level defences are smart, it was probably a lot easier to foil Ireland's attack than obviously it would have been if you had a Ringrose, a Henshaw for me, an Earls, an Osborne, a Jimmy O'Brien potentially, even though I don't think he has played 13, but I could be corrected on that. How you set out your team to attack, when you strip it back, Ireland, for me, had 2 12s playing there. But that wouldn't have helped Ross Byrne.
So we're potentially haven't even seen the best of him yet.
Of course you haven't, because I think it's his first Six Nations start, and the guy's 27. So in that position, you're at your best at around 30, but you need to be playing 3 or 4 games. So much of the first 10 games in green is trying to get used to that level, because it is very different to club rugby. There's no doubt about it. At club rugby, potentially in both teams, you could have, even on a good day, on a high level performance game, you could have 3 or 4 guys that you could find a lot of weaknesses in. In test games, it's very difficult to find fault with a lot of players. What happens at test level is that after 60 or 70 minutes, mentally one of the teams breaks, and the lead changes hands quite a bit. And I would be in agreement with, I suppose, a lot of the feedback from the game was that Italy's attack was the best attack that Ireland had faced, and it was because in the first 90 seconds, Italy could have scored a chance, or tried a chance to rip Ireland apart, and it came unstuck. And then Ireland, with their class, went up the other end and had a try disallowed. But then a minute later, off the restart, they go down the short side and they score a try. That's what great teams do. They get a moment and they capitalise. So I think, you look at it, there was Casey, Byrne, McCluskey, Aki. Potentially, I think when you're the manager, the coach, you'd be going, these are my squad players. These are brilliant for the games that we need if we're going to win a World Cup week after week. But as we all know, there's huge competition at 9, at 10. At 9, at 10, at 12 and at 13, because obviously I think Ireland would go... Henshaw 12, Ringrose at 13, Aki at 12, Ringrose at 13, Henshaw 12, Aki at 12, Henshaw at 13. So you have a strong argument for going, that's our third midfield playing there.
On the, just one last one for me on the Ross Byrne thing, and just the point that you made there about taking it to the line. Andy Dunn was on with Joe during the week, and he was talking about that the difficulty of playing 10. He said it was the hardest skill, that sort of taking it to the line, fixing it to the defender, getting the ball away as quick as you could as a 10. He said that for him that was always the hardest skill, and he had like the ultimate compliment for Byrne, which was to say that Finn Russell, Sexton, Garbisi and now Byrne are the best at playing that that he's seen in the game, that Ntamak is less good and that Farrell and Bigger are not good at that, and as I said, that he himself found it the hardest skill to master. What are your thoughts on that sort of, on that bit in the Byrne context?
Yeah, but I think that was obviously something that wasn't in his game 24 months ago, and he's worked hard on it. He's seen the pictures that he needs to get better at to give not alone himself a chance of shining a little bit better or brighter, but also for engaging defenders on the inside. It's a huge area of the game, or I wouldn't say an illness in the game, but one of the work-ons for any coach is that there are times when you're watching footage and you're not too sure of the goalpost on the sideline or the goalpost north-south. So if you're to track me in my thinking here, when you look at body shapes of an awful lot of players and releasing the pass, if you didn't have a side-on view of the footage you're looking at, you'd be thinking that the goalposts are on the sideline because that's where all their hips are pointing. So
because it's safer.
Because I think they have a completely different mental image in their head, and B, players are very good at looking after themselves, and I'm all right, Jack, but if the 9, the 10 and the 12 are across field, the 13 is going to get absolutely melted, which essentially isn't the 9 and 10 or 12's problem if he doesn't have I suppose, an open or a caring mindset for what's the best for the team. They can get away with probably having time on the ball, but the 13 and 15 are going to get 4 defenders. They're going to get chopped, and there's going to be 2 people around them, which means that you have a high likelihood that you'll probably lose the ruck, or you'll get penalised for holding on in the tackle.
Ronan, we've had a lot of discussion in the last week or so since the game about the decision making in terms of going for touch or going for the posts, and look, James Ryan did a brilliant job, I thought, as captain, and that's not an easy decision. For those of us who have never or will never set foot on a top level rugby pitch, just how much of that decision making process is down to the number 10 in terms of being comfortable with the potential kick for posts, and how much is on the captain? Like, I'm sure there are discussions in the dressing room before the game, but I guess a lot of it has to be reactive.
Yeah, well, if there's discussions in the dressing room before the game, it's too late. This needs to be sorted out, obviously, as a work in progress and a general team, which I suppose is consistent throughout the season. But what is where it becomes a little bit grey, and grey is probably a poor word to use, but where it becomes interesting is the fact that what's the energy like in the opposition? What's the energy like in my team? What's the scoreboard looking like? Is there a yellow card involved? So there's potential areas that cannot be discovered till the I suppose the heat of battle. So it's I suppose the parameters for the discussion are quite narrow, yet the one thing you're looking at, I suppose, is body language of the opposition. Are they vulnerable, or are they? Is it better to keep the scoreboard ticking? And I think that's easily sorted out between obviously the kind of, I suppose, the leader, the captain, but also the goal kicker, but also maybe one or two others that should have an input. There shouldn't be just 2 people having an input. I think that, because if one of them is the captain and the other is the goal kicker, it becomes a little bit of a one-on-one, which is not good. The kicker should be not the decision maker in that. It should be the leaders of the team.
Even when the kicker is sometimes the key leader.
Yeah, because I think there are different times throughout the season or in games where the leader, the kicker, will feel bulletproof. Yet there are times it's impossible for anyone, no matter how good they are, to not have a downward spiral in his performance or in his game. It's at those moments where the leaders of the team need to go, okay, it's best for the team, irrespective of how the kicker is feeling, that we're keeping the scoreboard ticking. If you're leaving that solely to the goal kicker, for me, it's a poor choice.
Can I just ask you one, Ronan? We were touching yesterday, and it kind of struck me in terms of the Irish rugby team as well. We were talking about Casemiro and the impact he had at Manchester United, and it's similar with that great Liverpool team of the last number of years as well, where they win a foul or for small moments on the pitch, they're celebrating, giving it loads. Creates a bit of a bond with the supporters as well. But it struck me at Wembley last weekend, Casemiro, barely celebrates his goal, and yet shepherds the ball out for a goal kick and gives it large to the United fans behind the goals. I've noticed it with this Irish team in this Six Nations as well. They seem to really celebrate the small moments. Is that something that strikes you as a definite sign of a strong winning mentality?
Yeah, because obviously the environment is humming. I think what is great, it's not the team that's humming, it's the squad that's humming, it's the group that's humming. It's incredibly difficult to get into that team, even to get into that 23, and that's exactly what you want. The team now has momentum, it's driving itself. They have huge confidence from their, I suppose, performance record and from their performance data, but also their capacity to win games no matter how. In November, games at home, they were arm wrestled. We haven't had a tight game yet in the Six Nations. Someone say Italy is a tight game, but when you pull away by 14 points, that's impressive when you're under the pump with a lot of players that probably, when Ireland have a first, I suppose, pool of players, that they may not be near that 23. So strength and depth is at an all-time high. I think the atmosphere seems like an all-time high, and now they have serious options in so many positions where we've got to a point where one of Ireland's best players, and will remain one of the best players, or two of their best players, in Henshaw and Tadhg Furlong, Tadhg Byrne. The show's gone on, and that's exactly what happens.
Just as you mentioned that, it brought to mind Brian was on again during the week, and he was talking about the positive mindset in the group, and like that they're not thinking about just getting past quarter final. Like, I don't know if they're talking overtly about it, but that his feeling was that as a mindset they're thinking about winning the World Cup. Does that differ from what the experience of your days in an Ireland shirt?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's easy to talk, that's what the public do and people outside of the camp do, but they'll have their own goals internally. I wouldn't think they're talking about, they know what the long-term goal of the team is, but talking about the World Cup internally is completely irrelevant. They're on the cusp of potentially doing something that very, very few Irish teams have done. So short-term, medium-term focus is trying to beat Scotland and trying to beat England. Then there'll be a complete reassess. There'll be more rugby played, and then in a few months' time they'll make a plan for winning the World Cup. But they also know that what they've embedded in the past towards what they want to achieve next September, October. But you can't just go from hurdle 2 to hurdle 8 without jumping the other hurdles. So they seem to be stealing a lead in a lot of teams in their mental preparation, but also in their physical performances. So I think it's an awful lot of wasted energy if you're talking about winning a World Cup now.
Does this team feel... There was interesting quotes I read from Paul O'Connell this week, Ron, where he was talking about, he said, in terms of cramming, when he was a player for the Irish international team, he said, we tried to cram for the exam a little bit back in our day, the week of big games. For a lot of these guys, the work is done. Do you kind of understand what he's saying there in terms of this team maybe feeling different to previous eras?
Well, what is happening now is that they're being incredibly consistent. Okay, so the World Cup is a different form, obviously, and the brutality of having to win 7 or 8 games is in a short space of time. That's a different test, and that's a test that can wait. But also, what is very evident now is that they have, irrespective of who plays in the jersey, a certain standard of performance, and they have, I suppose, performance measurements within them that they have to meet to achieve what they want to achieve. But I would say it would be very enjoyable also being an Irish player at the minute with the detail and capacity, or the capacity of the coaches that they are working with. You know, it's slipped under the radar. Well, maybe at home, you speak about a lot of like someone like how Paul has transformed the way the Irish forwards are playing. They're very, very rare you'd see a turnover from a structural error. Their skill set is hugely impressive. Their capacity to run onto the ball, to win collisions, their angles are very, very interesting. Their fitness is through the roof. Their capacity to do, I suppose, high speed, repeated efforts is very, very interesting to watch. And their, I suppose, capacity to challenge the defence wherever there is space and moving that ball is what we haven't, I suppose, seen consistently from previous teams.
Are you? Do you pay any attention what's going on down in New Zealand the last couple of days?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, obviously the Crusaders got a belt in Super Rugby at the weekend, and then they're going to announce their new coach. So in the next 6 weeks, is it?
Yeah, it looks that way. Yeah, is your pal getting in at last?
We don't know. It's obviously a very competitive job, so no idea.
Is it unfair on Ian Foster, Ronan? And I mean that in terms of, you know, he's got a World Cup to prepare for, and yet the timing of it maybe seems a bit strange. Like, could all this not have waited until after the tournament, or am I being a bit naive there? Is that too late?
Yeah, I think that's the way professional sport is. You know, you can say Ian Foster has been involved for so many years, an assistant, then as the main man. This is his window to do something, irrespective of how it goes. He's on to a new challenge. That's the way the game is going now. So much of professional sport is managed in advance to get your planning right, to get the preparation right. So I think from, I suppose, where we all started off in terms of this next coach for New Zealand, it's been a probably saga that has gone on too long and has dragged on, and now there will be certainty on it. But I would agree with you, going forward is probably a better way of getting the timing right.
There seem to be a weird split, obviously, between the union there and the players as well. So see how that pans out over the next while. Ronan, we did want to ask you, a terribly sad week again for Irish rugby with the passing of Tom Tierney and Brian O'Brien. Brian particularly would have been coming into and you would have known him prior to that, I'm sure, but coming into the Irish scene around the time that you would have come in.
Yeah, geez, it was 2 text messages. One was obviously more brutal than the other, and the fact that Tom was obviously my age, and then Brian O'Brien was a great age, but a fit man and a strong man and a sound man, and it poses a lot of questions in your head when you receive news like that. I think that everyone was caught badly when the text about Tom came through, because it was a huge shock. So yeah, it's incredibly sad, obviously, for Mary and the kids, and obviously for Brian O'Brien's extended family, and family, and they're very tight family. So my my thoughts are definitely with both families this week. Brutal times.
Yeah, it's terribly sad. Brian particularly always struck me as been in and around press conferences covering games at that time, that there was a bit of a fatherly figure almost to him. Was that overstating it, or what was your experience of him?
No, you're right, yeah. Very caring man, very decent man. Great sense of humour, good man for a sing-song. But also would pick you up if you were to, if you'd overhear you not saying please or thank you. Little things like that when you're being shaped as a young player, and big on discipline, big on respect. A hard, a fair, a decent man, and would square up to you too. Loved the kind of the physicality of when we were in our prime as players. He'd have no problem dropping a shoulder into you to make sure you were on guard. But yeah, it's hard to comprehend. It's a little bit like, like Axel, you still think you're going to see the guy next month.
Yeah, very sad. And as you said, our thoughts with both of their families this week. Ronan, thanks a million. Good luck against Poe tomorrow. We'll talk to you about that down the track. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Thank you. Have a good Friday. Thank you.
Ronan O'Gara on the line there from La Rochelle.